Hey everyone, welcome back to the Whoopi Studio and welcome back to the Undead Talk podcast. We're here today to talk about The Walking Dead Season 4, Episodes 13, 14, and 15, and my dad is here to join me.
Hey, everybody.
So, for starters, we have a big announcement to make. We are moving the podcast to every other week. So, there will be two, sometimes three episodes a month. And the reason we're doing this is because we've been so busy and school is starting. And with my work schedule, it doesn't leave us a whole lot of time during the week to watch three episodes and record. So, we thought this would be a good choice.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm a pastor and I only work 1 day a week. So I have all the time in the world, but Micah does not.
Exactly.
Exactly. I'm just kidding with that.
Yeah. He
All
has
right.
so much free time.
Yep.
He could run this
I
podcast.
could do that because
Yeah.
I have so much free time.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so I thought these were three pretty good episodes. I mean, I definitely enjoyed two of them more than the other one. But I think they were all at least decent. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think they all had their points. They all had their building concepts, and we're getting to the finale, and it's moving us that direction, which is important, with some character background stuff, which I think is neat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it starts off, or here's the synopsis for season 4, episode 13, called Alone. Maggie splits off from Bob and Sasha when she finds a map to Terminus. Walkers besiege a funeral home where Daryl and Beth are hiding. So I thought this was a pretty good episode, but I mentioned it to you how I kind of like the plot twist at the end because I think if there were the plot twist, it would have just been a more of like a standard
Yeah,
episode.
I agree. This episode was kind of blah to me until the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
I think there were good aspects thrown in at the end, though, like the idea of like a team being a team and not splitting off from your team
Right.
and working through things together.
Mm-hmm.
That I liked, just well, with the Bob, Maggie, and Sasha plot.
Correct.
Um, but the first scene is a flashback, and we kind of see Bob on his own, and we see where he was at before the apocalypse. And we had this earlier in this with Michonne and her flashbacks a
Mm-hmm.
few episodes ago. So they're kind of focusing on the newer characters and kind of showing us where they were before all of this happened, which I think is interesting.
Right. Right.
And we see him getting picked up by Daryl and Glenn. They're off out on the runs, and then they bring Bob back. They ask him the three questions, and I like that. That's like a consistent theme for all of this. Is like those three questions, and you have to answer those in order to be let in. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it does provide consistency, and it does open up. It gives the opportunity for people to tell the truth, especially the last question: how many people will be killed? And that's important.
Mm-hmm.
In developing a community with safety, that people are honest from the get go.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but through all of this, I thought Bob was going to cut the axe like this episode, just because they always do it so far. They really focus on a certain character and then they kill them. But that actually wasn't the case, and that was like a sigh of relief for me.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was watching an episode. Okay, Bob's going to bite the bullet here, and he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
At least not yet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So the trio they discover a map to Terminus and they decide to go there. But they set up camp at night, and Maggie decides to go off to Terminus on her own. She's determined to find Glenn. She's not going to let these other two people slow her down. So she goes off on her own. But Bob and Sasha they decide to go after her. Um, Mostly Bob though is like the main person behind all this. He's insistent that they stay together. And I think part of that is because, he wants this community and he wants to feel like he belongs. And he probably in the past has like been abandoned before. So
Correct.
he doesn't think any of them should abandon each other. He doesn't think Sasha should abandon Maggie or Maggie should abandon both of them. So he's like trying to be, I guess, the moral compass of this particular group in his own
Yeah,
way.
in its own way, he's doing a great job, and that probably has to do with the backstory that they're presenting of him being
Mm-hmm.
isolated, and then him desiring not to remain alone. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody should be alone, by the way. That's the name of the episode.
Yeah. And through all of this, like Sasha is kind of being a bit negative, doesn't think like Tyrese is still out there. She doesn't think they should go after Maggie. She thinks they should set up like at a permanent residence that they find. But Bob thinks they need to go find Maggie and they need to go to Terminus. So then they kind of like part ways briefly, and
Mm-hmm.
then he kisses her.
Right.
And she doesn't. It's like it seems like a very dry kiss. Like we don't really see any
Yeah, you
sign
don't
of
see the spark.
affection
Right.
from her or like any spark between them. So I don't know. Do you think this will be a potential
No, I
relationship?
don't think so. I think it was a test. I think Bob was testing the waters here, seeing whether anything was there.
And they're
But I don't think, regardless, even if there was something there, I don't think it would deter him from going after Maggie. I mean, I think
no.
that was his objective, is to keep the group
Mm-hmm.
together, to
Yeah.
survive together.
And what do you think of Sasha through all of this? Just kind of being like a bit of a Debbie Downer.
Well, we talk about this every episode, the trauma from the apocalypse and everything that they've experienced since then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People cope in different ways. And Sasha here is hurting,
Mm-hmm.
and she is revealing that in the way that she's being negative. She's showing that she's hurting inside, and she doesn't have hope, and that's a very dangerous place to be. Is when we don't have
Yeah,
hope.
yeah, for sure. But then we have Sasha coming across Maggie, and the two of them fight against the Walkers together. I thought that was a pretty good team up.
Yeah,
Pretty good fight sequence, and how they kind of like by the end understand each other a bit more, and maybe they're more alike than they originally thought. Because I think
yeah,
they both have like good leadership qualities and
for
in
sure.
their own ways. And then the two of them catch up to Bob, and then they all head off to Terminus together.
Hmm.
And I like that ending because here I thought this whole time like one of them is going to bite the dust, specifically Bob, or like they're going to be apart now and like split up. But no, it actually ends on like a happy note for the three of them. And we have Maggie and Bob kind of like show like a friendship between them. Maggie and Sasha showing a friendship between them. It was like a nice like deter from what we usually see. Just like I think the idea that like these three need each other. They've been through this. They've been on their own, the three of them, for this whole time. Like they can't split up now. They have to keep going together. I like that theme. Do you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then that final scene, we have Glenn finding the map to Terminus, which was a nice way to end things off by showing he's catching up to them.
Hmm.
Um, it is interesting how every group's on their own path. Some are more ahead than others. We don't actually see any of them get to Terminus until the final scene of these three episodes. But it's like definitely like a build up.
Hmm.
The other plot line through all of this is with Daryl and Beth, and they're growing closer. They find a graveyard, and then they have this sweet moment where they hold hands.
Hmm.
And it's just like it's very different. Daryl, who's usually gruff and very closed off, is now opening up to Beth. Their connection from the last episode, it continues, and they're growing even closer than ever in this
It's a
episode.
brother sister vibe going on here.
Hmm.
He's the older brother,
Hmm.
and it's a pretty neat connection they got going on.
Yeah.
She looks up to him, but in certain ways, she's inspiring him.
Hmm.
I love that vulnerability at the graveside. I thought that was pretty cool.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think and Daryl's about to like open up there at the end about like how he feels about her.
Hmm.
Now I don't know if he was going to reveal that he liked her or if he was just going to like reveal how much he like appreciates her like in a platonic way,
Right.
in his own way. Well, whether it is or not, we don't get the answer because then they get attacked by walkers and Beth gets kidnapped. That was a plot twist for me. And it was such a bummer because it's one of those things like they're growing so close, but then things have to take a twist. I was not expecting her to get kidnapped, and this doesn't get brought back up again in these three episodes. What happens to her? Because Daryl's kind of on his own thing. Do you have any guesses? What?
I've been thinking quite a bit about it. I wonder who it is, and I don't know if all roads go to Terminus. I don't know if the answer is there,
Or if
um,
this is something completely different?
or something completely different that shows up next season or whatever. But I'm worried here. I'm
Hmm.
worried this isn't going to end well. So
Yeah. Well, it's just hard too because they've been building this connection between them. It's like we don't want it. We didn't want it to end, and then they had to drive a wedge in between it.
right, right,
So, but it was a good plot twist, though. It definitely gave
yeah.
some like, suspense going forward. And then that final scene where Daryl comes across the people that Rick fought against in the house a few
Hmm.
episodes back, and like kind of showing maybe not him teaming up, but like just going with them. that was a nice little plot twist too that I was not expecting.
Yeah, again, I think all roads are leading to terminus, and what that says is all of our favorite characters are going there, but also the villains that
Hmm.
we're meeting along the way,
Hmm.
and maybe those people that abducted Beth are also heading there. I
Maybe.
found it really interesting that the characters that Rick encountered, he was under the bed and all that, which was really suspenseful, have an ongoing storyline here.
Hmm.
Um, and we'll talk about it more in the episode ahead. But I find this group of characters very interesting.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
anyway,
The Claimers. Yeah, very interesting group for sure. So that's kind of the episode. What were you say were some key themes from it?
well, we talked about the name of the episode alone. It speaks to Bob's flashbacks, I think, of being alone. And then when Maggie goes on her own to find Glenn, Bob is persistent in the sense of they got to stay together. We see Beth being taken, so she's alone and leaving Daryl alone.
Hmm.
And the spiritual theme of the fear of isolation. I mean, we're afraid of being left alone,
Hmm.
and that's a scary thing, especially the more neuroscience tells us that the brain picks up on connections, and
Hmm.
we need to be known, we need to be loved, we need to belong, and so we have a fear of isolation. There's also the strength and unity, the formation of community that we're seeing in these characters and how they need each other, and then hope and perseverance that we especially see this in Maggie as she continues to find hunt for Glenn. She has hope. She's going to
Hmm.
find him again. Where Sasha doesn't think Tyrese is alive. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did that on purpose to show like the differing between Maggie and Sasha.
Yeah,
There's no like fight between them, but like they just have different,
contrasting.
yeah, contrasting, and then Bob kind of being the middle ground, moral compass with them.
Yeah, I would give
Yeah.
this episode a 7.5 or an 8.
Yeah, I was thinking an 8. It's definitely the weakest, I would say, of the three.
Yes,
But again, I like some of the overall themes of it, and the plot twists were a cool little twist at the end.
yes, agreed.
So it was definitely better than the one before with the Daryl and Beth, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I would agree.
So
Yeah, I'd say 8
yeah,
probably. Yeah.
8. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is season 4, episode 14, The Grove, and it says on their way to Terminus, Tyrese's group finds a house that may be a safe haven, but Mika and Lizzie's strange behavior there threatens them all. And I feel like this one was just such a hard to watch episode through all of it because there's so much messed up stuff that happens, but some really good stuff with specifically Carol and Tyrese at the end, which we'll talk about. But it starts off and they're all going to Terminus. And Carol and Tyrese are like off the top, like they're concerned for the sisters. Mika is very gentle and doesn't want to have to kill the walkers, and Lizzie is it's really hard to explain what her motivations are, what she's going through. She doesn't understand what the walkers are. She thinks that they're her friends and that they shouldn't be killed. Um, and I think I could kind of understand Mika's like her plot line or whatever is more than Lizzie's because Mika is just simply scared. She's a little girl. She doesn't understand what's going on. Again, she lost her father. She is just she's just like scared and she just doesn't she feels inferior to Lizzie, I think too, because Lizzie is definitely more bold and Mika's like the younger sister that just doesn't really know what she's doing. I think I could understand that more than Lizzie's psychoticness. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely understand Mika much more. I think a lot of this goes back to the death of their dad,
Yeah.
and the way that Carol presented the death, and tried to toughen them up, giving them an
Mhm.
opportunity to watch, even kill their dad after, well, not kill, uh, you know, second death. I don't know how we're gonna, after he had already died before
Yeah.
he transformed into a walker. And I think the trauma broke both girls.
Mhm.
One, you have Lizzie who desires this relationship with her father
Mhm.
and thinks that the death of her father, um, was a mistake, that he's still a person and he was killed and should have been remaining alive. And Mika, on the other hand, she's just scared to death. She's this little
Mm-hmm.
girl, and she's experienced so much death and all this stuff. So anyway, I
Mm-hmm.
think both girls are dealing with trauma in much different ways, and it's a result of the apocalypse. Now, that's not to discount that there might be other mental health issues or genetic issues or whatever, but we see two girls contrasting in the way they're handling this apocalypse. One uh, is unable to see reality that these people are no longer people; they're monsters, and the other one just scared and
Mm-hmm.
needs companionship and safety.
Yeah. And it was interesting how Miko was saying really wise words to Carol, you know. And I think that was like the moment where like they wanted us to maybe to root for Mika more and show that like she's very to like that
Don't kill
contrast.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, I would agree. And
Yeah.
I think that moral compass of Herschel, you know, we see glimpses of it through other people.
hmm
Um, the humanity of people.
hmm
Um, and when someone turns into a zombie, they're no longer the person. And so we see this dilemma walking through, and Herschel was that moral compass that kept everybody in check, and he's gone. And we
hmm
see Carol going in a very dangerous direction here. Anyway,
Yeah. They could discover a house on a pecan grove, which I guess is probably part of the name of the episode, the
the grove,
grove. Yeah.
yeah.
And they decide to set up there, and then Carol sees Lizzie playing tag with a walker, and then she kills her right, or kills the walker right in front of Lizzie, and Lizzie gets very upset, saying like you killed my friend, and just yells at her.
Mm-hmm.
Having like a psychotic breakdown pretty much, and Carol does not know how to handle it at all.
Right.
Lizzie just kind of runs off on her own. Um, and then we see that Lizzie is feeding rats to the walkers. Mika sees this, and she's obviously thinks that's crazy. Doesn't actually say it, but pretty much tells Lizzie like you shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
And then they all head back, and then they all fight off against the walkers at
Mm-hmm.
that scene at the fence. Even Mika is shooting a few
Mm-hmm.
bullets. Once again, I don't think she wants to have to do it, but I think after Carol told her that she was weak, she's been starting to become a bit more. And I think seeing how Lizzie is so again bold, she's starting to like come out of her shell like a little bit more, whether she wants to or not.
She
Um,
has to.
yeah,
It's survival.
yeah, for sure. Um, and then what Mika says something like, or no, Lizzie says like, it's okay to be mean, but only sometimes. And it's almost because then we have Carol telling Lizzie, walkers are dangerous, they need to be killed. And Lizzie says, I know what I have to do now. Which, I mean, in a normal world, you would think, or a normal show with a normal character, you would think that would be like her turning point, that she would become good now. But no, I knew something was up. I knew something was going to happen. Because then she kills Mika and she's like, she will come back, so it's fine. That was crazy to me.
It
Like that
was. It
she,
was bizarre. I didn't see it
yeah,
coming. But to kill
yeah,
your own sister with the belief that she would come back again as a human being, basically resurrect,
hmm
is bizarre. And the reason it's bizarre is because that's not what is happening, but she sees it this way. It's her perspective is warped. Um, I mean, she's seen death all around her, so it's very bizarre, hard to understand. But as we practice empathy, it's just difficult.
that's one of those cases where like it's hard to show empathy for a person when you do something crazy like that.
It
I'm
is,
like, there's like, what? How on earth would your mind lead you to do something like that? That's just wild to me.
and it
Um,
has to be some sort of illness.
yeah.
It has to
Oh,
be
for sure.
the
She has
trauma is
something
just
really,
broken.
yeah, really wrong with her. Um, and Carol and Tyrese are shocked at this. Like they have no idea how to respond. This has broken them. And then Carol like cries after like this happened. Like she breaks down like after seeing Lizzie kill Mika. That was very hard for her. Um, and then we have Carol and Tyrese talking, and they decide they can't go to Terminus with Lizzie because it's dangerous for her to be around other people.
Yeah, and Judith
And
especially.
Judith, right? I mean, she was about like she put her hand and was like going to choke Judith a few episodes back
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. So like it's not safe for her to be around Judith, um and Carol makes the decision to kill Lizzie. So we got both the sisters dying in this episode. I think one highlight through all this is that I don't remember. Do you remember the actress? Is his name who plays Carol?
Not off the
I
top of
don't
my
know.
head.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think she did a great job through these scenes. Um,
Yeah.
and like again, she's a great crier, and I think like this episode was like the peak of her like performance, and because she's been really been given like a lot of layers and like good scenes, so I did like really like that. However, none of this made me like Carol anymore. I've had like a love hate relationship with her this season because I think she's like she should because I do think overall she's a good person. However, this season they've made me kind of believe otherwise. It's very interesting. I was not expecting them to go more of like a dark Carol route. This episode furthered my thing that she does that maybe she's going to be a villain or that she has those villain instincts about her. It was again very hard to watch, but what did you think of
Yeah,
Carol
no.
killing her?
I struggled with it. I still struggle with it. I have a hard time talking about it. It's like giving up hope on somebody.
Hmm.
And I'm against the death penalty. I don't know. I don't know if I ever could give up on somebody. I understand protection and taking care of the baby, but to end somebody, I just don't feel like that's our job. I mean, again, I know there's self defense and all those things, but her just standing there and killing her in cold blood, I'd really struggle with it. Now, I take this back to Carol's decision to try to toughen up the girls. I mean, she was very intentional about forcing these girls to grow up.
Hmm.
And really wonder if there is some sort of regret, in the crying and everything that Carol did in this episode, regret of that decision. And again, it's all hypothetical because this is fiction, work of fiction, but it's like, you know, does she regret the decision to try to force children to be adults? And does all that she did that have a very negative effect on both girls?
Oh,
And
I think
I don't
so.
know.
I mean, I don't I think she is regretting her decisions through all of that. Now that might be more in the future. Maybe she'll regret more, depending on where her character goes. Um, but I do think I wouldn't say that was not self defense what she did to Lizzie because Lizzie was not like fighting her or gonna shoot her. Like Lizzie was just crying. She was breaking down. We don't know what she would have done, but then Carol just made that decision like okay, like I'm gonna kill you. It didn't feel like at that moment it did not feel warranted. Now, if the circumstances had been different, like maybe she was gonna kill Carol, that would be a different story.
Or Judith.
Or Judith or Tyrese or
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hard. I mean, sure, maybe they thought because she killed Mika, it was okay to kill her. I don't know. I think that's up to grabs, like for viewpoints and all of that. I don't think she should have died, but I also don't know what a good alternative would have been.
I don't have an alternative,
Yeah.
but I think the alternatives um, would be better than killing her. And
Hmm.
then again, this is my own morals. This is my own. But I wonder what Herschel would have done. You see, and this is the thing. I mean, he was against killing of the who was it back in the barn that they took captive.
Randall.
Randall. I mean, there's so many elements to this whole thing,
Well,
but
that was Dale, but I get what you're
yeah,
saying.
I'm
Like,
sorry, that
yeah.
was Dale. Sorry,
Hmm.
but in the sense of what is the moral compass and the loss of Herschel and how does that affect
Hmm.
morality? And yeah, I don't have an
Hmm.
answer, but
Yeah.
it's bothered me.
Yeah. So the other plot at the end of this is Carol telling Tyrese that she killed Karen. And I think I like this scene the best because it still is like crazy that Carol would do that, but it felt more grounded than everything else that happened. They had kind of built up this thing throughout the season. The season started with her killing Karen, and then Tyrese like broke mentally. And then we have here where she finally reveals it, and you have Tyrese's hand kind of on the gun, and you think, like, what's he going to do? And then he lets go of it and says, I forgive you. I will never forget it, but it's clear like you regret it.
Yep.
And I thought that was a great scene. And I think Tyrese is such a good person to be able to forgive her for that.
Yeah, you talk about moral compass. I think you see when Tyrese He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just not. He's not necessarily a leader. He's a follower.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
So it's interesting. He maybe can become something of an influence. I
Yeah.
hope.
I mean, his role is way bigger in the comics than
Is
it
it?
is in the show. So, like, I feel like, especially on the show, I feel like he hasn't gotten to do much since
Mm-hmm.
he's been on. But I think this was a great moment for his character.
Agreed.
So, and then it all ends off with Carol, Tyrese, and Judith. They leave the house and they go to Terminus. So more
Mm-hmm.
people going to Terminus again. I think it's all a setup for the finale. They're all going to arrive there.
Right.
But yeah, over to you for title and
Yeah.
themes. Yeah.
The Grove. I mean, it's a really cool title. The Grove is like this grouping of trees. It definitely has an image as a metaphor of peace, right? A grove
Mm-hmm.
is a very peaceful place, and so this place, which seems to be peaceful, that they're all camping out at, is not.
Mm-hmm.
This peaceful thing is actually chaotic, and so again, a lot of the writers, when they're using these titles, are actually playing with opposites, and we see that here. Um, Spiritual themes, we have the moral boundaries we talked about. Does Carol cross those boundaries? I think she does.
Yeah. Great.
There's a loss of innocence we see with Mika and we see with Lizzie. Even though they are still children, they have lost their innocence, and it's so sad to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then forgiveness. I mean, that's so beautiful with Tyrese forgiving her. He says a comment, I'll never forget, and that misnomer, in order to forgive you have to forget. I mean, that's garbage, and Tyrese knows it. He can forgive, but he will never forget this. It allows him to form his own boundaries and protects himself from trauma happening again. He's going to be cautious of Carol all the way into the future.
Mm-hmm.
He is going to watch her, and I don't think he's going to trust her. He can forgive her and let her go any sort of grudge, but he's not going to forget.
He's not going to kill her.
No, no, no. But
No.
he's not going to forget
Mm-hmm.
this. He's going to be
Mm-hmm.
cautious,
Yeah.
and that is normal and healthy
Well,
and
that's
good, right?
like, I mean, if Carol, because Carol hasn't really faced much many consequences for what she did, because she just got banished.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like the least consequences she could have is Tyrese just not trusting her.
Right.
So I think she's definitely got off a lot. I feel like for what she did. Now whether we'll get more of that in the future, I don't know. I don't picture them dragging that out for future seasons, though. That specific thing that she did. I don't know what you
Yeah,
think.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know how long these characters. I mean, Carol's going to still around because she's
Yeah,
in
I don't think
current
this is
shows,
going to
but
weigh on her for like multiple seasons, though. I
probably
think,
not.
yeah, I think this they kind of wrapped it up with the Tyrese
Yeah, I don't
angle a
know.
bit.
Dude, I don't know how to rate this episode. I really don't because I hated the. I hate strong word, but I disliked the killing of the girls here,
Yeah,
and that was so dark. And I disliked Carol's decision. I love Tyrese's, and so a way. I mean, I really like this episode for the depth
hmm
that this goes, but I disliked it. So be honest with you, I'd probably give it a 9 just because it touches on some pretty important issues.
yeah. I would say maybe like an 8.5 or a 9.
Okay.
Okay, it was good, not like great. Obviously, it was just very hard to watch. So not like what I'm gonna want to rewatch ever.
Nope.
Nope. That would be a skip if we ever rewatch in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. hmm okay, so season 4, episode 15 is called Us, and it says Glenn's group tries to catch up with Maggie and the others on the way to Terminus, and a squabble demonstrates the rule of roles in this new reality. I thought this was a great episode. Like, my
Agreed.
favorite of the three, almost like peak Walking Dead, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. It was that close to it. I love that beginning. We have Glenn, he sees that note for Maggie to go to Terminus, and he just rushes to go there. Like, he's not wasting any time. He, like, runs as fast as he can.
And I love the smile on his face.
Yeah, that
I
was a
loved it.
nice little open for that.
Mm-hmm.
And through all of this, we have Abraham, and he is insisting on protecting Eugene. When a walker almost falls on him, he like pushes him out of the way, and he is not willing to let him get hurt. And I think this is all leading to Eugene revealing he has no idea what he's doing, and everyone's going to be so pissed at him. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I do. I think Eugene's a joke, and I think Abraham's a joke too. I mean, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it that way, but
Oh, they,
Abraham is so blinded by this whole thing, and
yeah.
it's kind of silly. I mean, there's life and death right in front of him, and of course, there's a bigger mission. We talk about changing the world all the time, but I
hmm
think everything can be. I think both can be accomplished. We can take care of our group. We take care of the people in front of us, protect them, guide them, and
Yeah.
at the same time move towards changing the world. And maybe the strange thing that Abraham hasn't realized, and maybe we haven't either, is that the little things done right in front of us are actually what changes the world. Not necessarily just the big things.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Yeah. So Glenn gives Eugene his suit as a way to
Yeah.
like protect him
Yep.
more, and that makes Abraham like agree to continue on. But Tara gets like falls over and she hurts her ankle again. That was kind of stupid, but it wasn't like a huge deal, you know. I'm like
Right.
that was like convenient for like Eugene to knock her over, and then but whatever.
And Eugene
That
hitting on Tara.
oh gosh, that was wild, and it was so funny how she rejected him. Like she
Mm-hmm.
had no interest.
None.
But like the Abraham and Tara conversation was so interesting earlier on. It's something like I thought about like why what was the meaning of having those two interact, you know?
Mm-hmm.
There's been several scenes with them since these that they all got together with just those two. I'm like, what's the connection between them? Do you have any
No, I
thoughts?
don't.
I mean, I guess they're both tough in their own ways. You know, Tara was tough earlier on, now not as much. I don't know. It seemed kind of odd that they paired those two together.
Well, I think there's a sense of insecurity on both. Both our identities are connected to someone else. So Abraham's is Eugene, and Tara's is Glenn.
Yeah,
They both have missions. Glenn is to get back to Maggie, and
Eugene.
Abraham is to get Eugene. So I mean, both
Yeah,
are supporting characters for something
maybe
bigger.
they feel like second in command. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, Abraham seems like the leader of those three, but it's not his mission. It's Eugene's mission to get there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Tara is just a tag along, just by convenience. Like she would not be here. Um, but then they reach a tunnel, and Abraham hears walkers in there, so he doesn't want to go in. And if Eugene wasn't with them, none of that would have happened. It's only because he doesn't want Eugene to die.
Mm-hmm.
So they decide to part ways. I knew this wasn't going to be the end of them, though. Like that would be weird if they just cut that off there. So they part ways, and then we have Glenn and Tara going in to the tunnel, and he forgives her for her role in Herschel's death. Um, and I think there was something really meaningful through all of this of Glenn refusing to leave Tara behind,
Absolutely.
and I think that goes to show how good of a person he is.
I
He
yes.
like he doesn't have any reason really to like help Tara when she gets stuck in like the rocks or whatever, but he chooses to. He wants to go to Maggie, but he's not gonna let this poor girl behind. Like she didn't kill Herschel. She didn't know what Brian or the governor was really up to. She had no idea. She was just a lost girl, and she is a lost girl who's grieving her sister, her whole family, her girlfriend. And, you know, Glenn still has Maggie. Tara has no one. And Glenn can see that, and he's not going to give up on her. I thought there was something really meaningful about that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think Herschel's influence is really felt here in Glenn's moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Glenn being the son-in-law of Herschel, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see something happening with Glenn. His character is really growing.
Mm-hmm.
Remember where we first season one? He's just a kid,
Yeah.
kind of a punk,
Mm-hmm.
but he's becoming a leader, and
Mm-hmm.
he's committed, and he's making some really good decisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like the way he was taking care of Tara. The
Yeah.
way he forgives her, the way he won't leave her. There's something really good there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then we also have Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita like driving above, and Eugene is like telling Rosita where to go, and he just so happens that he stops it right above the ending to the tunnel,
Mm-hmm.
and because he wants to save them.
Right.
And yeah, I thought there was something meaningful about that too. Like you know these group of people like they're kind of in it together, just like Maggie, Bob, and Sasha were. You know, and I like that they kind of had that for two different groups. You know, they're not giving up on each other. None of them might be like particularly close, but they're in this together. I thought that was good writing.
Yeah, me too. I think there's, from a thematic standpoint, this idea of cooperation, unity
Mhm,
that is woven into this. We people cross paths all the time with one another, but
mhm,
there's this sense of loyalty to help each other survive, and not just survive, but thrive. And we see that here. Eugene has a good moment.
mhm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like seeing it because he's kind of been an idiot through this,
Mhm.
but it's neat to see. a good
Yeah.
moment here for him.
And then somehow they come across Maggie, Bob, and Sasha.
Yeah, and they don't show that.
Yeah, they don't show that. It's just like a coincidence, I guess, that they just happen to be there. But when that, I like that. That was like a nice shot, or when like they all of them are shooting at the walkers,
Yes,
like, and then
saying they
yeah,
save Glenn and Tara.
and then Glenn and Maggie reunite. That was all really good.
It was
I
great.
liked that whole sequence with all of that.
Yeah.
Um, and then Abraham's like, okay, we need to go to DC. You know, he's still insistent on that, but everyone else is like, let's go to Terminus first. Even Eugene. Again, Eugene shows a change in character in this episode, which was interesting, kind of unexpected.
Yeah.
So, and then they all go to Terminus at the end. Like, I did like that moment where Maggie finds the picture that Glenn has of her and says, "You won't need a picture to remember me." That was like a sweet little moment
It
between them.
was. I really like Glenn and Maggie together.
Mm-hmm.
They're a powerful symbol
Yeah.
in this show of survival and love. And
Well, the only love, really.
what's
Like
that?
the only couple.
Yeah, the only
I
couple.
guess you could have Abraham and Rosita, but they're not.
Yeah,
or Bob
they're
and
not really
Sasha.
showing that as a couple per se.
I mean, I'm sure there's been like something that happened.
In the comics, I think.
Yeah,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then Bob and Sasha, but that's not official.
Not a real
no.
thing. Yeah.
So Maggie and Glenn are the only one at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally agree. So yeah, they go to Terminus and they meet Mary, who offers them food. Now I don't know. Mary seems like a perfectly normal character there. Who knows? She could be evil.
There's like an ominous feeling to this. It's too good to be true.
It's
She's the only one there, and it all looks so good.
It's too nice.
It's too nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Woodbury.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be something similar, but there's going to be evil people behind Terminus.
Yeah.
So but the difference is that everyone's going to be meeting up at Terminus, where Woodbury was kind of its own thing, and then the prison. So it's going to be more like one location, I think.
Yeah, but I do think there's another possibility here. Talking about the finale, is what happens if it is all peaceful, and that gang that Daryl's with is what disrupts it all. Like
Maybe
they come in to take over, and they run into Rick, and the whole thing blows up. And
maybe that's not our finale is a fight between
Rick and that group,
and then we get everyone involved, like a big battle.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool.
And Terminus blows up, so peace is done again. I don't know. I
mean, I feel like if that was to happen, I feel like there should have been like at least like an episode in between with just peace and Terminus or something.
I could see that. That would be neat.
I feel like my opinion is that Terminus is corrupted, and
probably.
And next episode there'll be all of that. But there's this other plot line with Daryl and the Claimers. We have Daryl butting heads with Lynn. They both come across a rabbit at the same time. And then we have the leader named Joe who comes in and like they're going to split the rabbit in half. Joe was a very interesting leader through all of this because he, you know, at times you think he's bad and like he doesn't care about Daryl, but then at times, you know, it's like he does care about Daryl. You know, it's definitely like an interesting. What do you think of Joe, the leader?
You know, it is leadership developed in the midst of survival, and a desire to kind of like survival of the fittest. You know, name it, claim it. Like you see it, it's yours. Everything is up for grabs. It's really interesting. Definitely a warped way of thinking based on the way that we live today. But I know this way of thinking is prevalent in other countries and especially in societies that haven't been organized. And so this is pretty scary to me, especially is what happens with this group gets into a larger society, and can they weasel in and take over?
Yeah. We have Lynn accusing Daryl of stealing the rabbit.
Yeah.
And then we find out he planted the rabbit.
And what's his name, the leader?
Joe.
Joe saw it. So.
Yeah, Joe saw it. And then he orders the men to kill him. That was crazy.
It was.
So there's no rules in this group.
Well, there is rules.
Well,
and there's rules. It's really warped sense of rules. And everything's
the rules about death. Like
if you
something,
break the rule,
you die.
Yeah,
that's wild to me. That just shows these are a threat. These people are a threat. So Daryl, I feel like Daryl is gonna might break the rules and he might come close to. I know clearly not. Um, it's going to be curious how that all plays out. That ending, we have them. They're all heading to Terminus, and Joe tells Daryl about his encounter with Rick, and he wants to get revenge. But Daryl has no idea who he's talking about.
Right.
Now, my opinion is that next episode we're gonna get to see some sort of battle. Rick is gonna come across these people again, and Daryl's gonna be stuck in the middle, but he will ultimately side with Rick.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because Daryl doesn't like these guys.
No,
I
he
mean,
doesn't.
Joe's growing on him a little bit for his leadership, I think. But, I mean, I don't think he likes him at all. And I think he'll bail on him as soon as their opportunity comes. And he definitely will protect his people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're right. And there's probably a lot that you could look at with Joe, from a narcissistic point of view. And we've seen that with the governor, and we saw it with Rick at certain times. And so, yeah, the conflict between Rick and Joe isn't going to end well.
No, it's not. Nope. Okay, so what were like title and themes for this episode?
It's called Us, and Us focuses on the sense of community and the bonds that are formed and strengthened as the characters strive to reunite and build trust among each other. We see this with Glenn and Tara. We see the reunion with Maggie and Glenn, and we see this in the saving of Glenn and Tara in the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty powerful. Some spiritual themes. We talked about unity and cooperation. The group's stronger together. We see hope and belief in humanity, and this is really Terminus. Everyone's kind of hoping that this is going to be a safe haven, and it looks good. First impressions. And then, we see the challenges of trust. And trust is a central theme, especially as new people come in and things have to be tested. So do we trust Terminus? Do we trust, what's her name, the lady?
Mary.
Mary. Do we trust Mary? It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What would you give this one?
I give it 9.
I'm gonna go with a 9.5 because I think this was all very good, and I loved Abraham, Eugene, Rosita, Maggie, Bob, Sasha, like a mega group rescuing Glenn and Tara. That was such a good moment. And then Glenn and Maggie reuniting, and again Glenn refusing to give up on Tara. All of that was great.
It was.
And then even the Daryl stuff is very interesting to me with the Claimers group. And then there was one scene with Rick, Carl, and Michonne, but this really there hasn't been a lot of focus on them. They've kind of feel like more like minor characters through the second half of the season. And that's probably needed
because they've spent so much time on Rick. So probably a good idea to develop more of the characters.
Yeah. So yeah, I know you have something pulled about lingering questions.
Yeah. So here's just some things that I'm thinking about. What will happen in Terminus? I mean, that's an important question.
We talked about that. I think it's gonna be corrupted. I don't think it's gonna be a real safe place. That's my guess.
Second question is, how will the group dynamics change after the reunions?
I'm trying to think specific characters. I mean, Rick and Carol reuniting will be interesting. Daryl and Carol reuniting. They haven't spoken since Daryl learned about the killing, right? Because Carol was already gone. So maybe a lot of the stuff with Carol and other people in the group.
Well, I mean, like you think of how will Glenn and Tara get along now that Maggie's back?
I don't know if that'll be much different.
Yeah,
we'll see.
So what is the true nature of the threat at Terminus? What is Mary's intentions? And again, with that group coming back, you call them the Claimers?
Well, I think that's what they said, the Claimers, yeah.
Oh, okay, I missed that. What will the Claimers do when they get to Terminus? Another question is, how will Carol's actions influence her future relationships? And this is a big one, man.
I don't know.
Once people hear what Carol did, if they do, how are people going to trust her?
Well, I would not be able to trust her. So I don't know. That's going to be interesting to me. How, again, everything with Carol, I'm most interested in what's going to happen with her, for sure, through all of this.
Last question. How will Tyrese's forgiveness of Carol influence other group members? So the question 4 was, how will Carol's actions influence the group and future relationships? That's a negative.
Hmm.
But in the sense of Tyrese, forgiveness, that's a positive. How will that forgiveness influence the rest of the group?
Well, I hope people like view Tyrese like as like a good, more of a like. I hope he'll get more like attention. Again, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
he's a leader, but I think he, compared to other people, is not maybe taken it seriously in the group, in that
Mm-hmm.
overall group. So I hope people will like, I guess, gain more respect for him. Is
Yeah.
my hope. I think he has a lot of potential, but they just haven't done a whole lot with him so far.
Yeah.
Um, so that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah. And then, as I think, lastly, I think about Herschel's moral compass, and is there anyone that can replace Herschel? I see a few people, Glenn and Maggie and Tyrese and Michonne, all
Hmm.
having some good character. But then, Carol, um, as being the outlier of the group, will she learn? Will she develop? Will she become something different based on
Hmm.
all that she has? And that's my hope, is that she'll change.
And for a short term, I thought maybe a little Mika was a little bit of the moral
Yeah, yeah,
compass.
absolutely.
Hmm.
At least honesty and
Honesty. Yeah,
innocence in a sense. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah, great episodes, man. I
Hmm.
enjoyed all these three. I'm looking forward to the finale. When are we going to watch it?
We'll watch it soon, that's for sure. I'm
Yep,
very excited to see what happens.
yep, me too.
So we'll be back in 2 weeks for that finale, and then of course our usual favorite, least favorite character, which we've got to start thinking about.
Oh yeah, I have
Hmm.
to definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, we will see you in 2 weeks, and thanks everyone for listening, and bye everyone.
See ya.